I'm Peter Mandler. I'm professor of modern cultural history at the University of Cambridge. Welcome to my exp. Democracy, the advent of democracy, which in most places only really arrived at the beginning of the 20th century, so only about a century ago. Democracy has had a tendency to expand the demand for education. Initially, that started out as an elite project, being forced to concede democracy, universal suffrage. Elites think, well, how can we ensure that the new electorate will behave themselves? Well, we need to implant schools in every community. But once democracy beds in, I think it becomes a servant of democracy rather than its master. And I think newly democratized and fully democratized populations feel that the education is a necessary equipment for citizenship. So you do it roughly up to the age that citizenship is acquired, around 18. So that's one obvious factor that encourages the spread of education. And there's actually a pretty good correlation between democratizing societies and the provision of education. Work is also getting more complicated, and work also requires higher levels of cognitive performance, especially as we move from a manual labor and maybe industrial economy to a post-industrial, what's sometimes called the knowledge economy. And I think that is a factor, except that it is, as I say, only a subset of the general demand that modern life places upon us for higher cognitive performance. And actually, what we really mostly need in order to meet the demands of the changing workplace is not specific skills which the workplace is going to ask of us, but rather just a high general level of cognitive performance and a trainability, so that, because our work life lasts much longer into the future than our school life does. And what employers want is to be able to take us and mold us to whatever the demands of the moment are. They don't want us to be filled up with useless rubbish, which might have been relevant in 2020, but might be totally useless in 2050. They want us just to be flexible and trainable. And again, I think education provides that. So I think there is a way in which the demands of work do require more education as well, but I think they're really subsidiary to the demands of modern life in general. There is a very famous study by two economists done in the U.S. Called The Race Between Technology and Education. And although the title of it makes you think, oh, this must be about the way in which the demands of the workplace drive the demand for more education, which is, as I said earlier, the conventional view. And that is kind of the argument of these economists, because they're economists and that's the way they think. Nevertheless, the evidence they present is very much about, this is America after all, about equal civil rights being established relatively early, and this leading to the demand for more education. So it works, it's not about the workplace, it's about the polity, and it works in that direction from equal rights in the polity towards the demand for education to make those equal rights real. And the wonderful material that they have to adduce to this argument comes from Iowa, one state in the United States, where there is relative social equality and equal rights relatively well established at the beginning of the 20th century. And this leads to what's known as the high school movement, where communities think, well, how can we best equip our young people to go out into the wider world and be free, functioning citizens of the United States? Well, it's by giving them a high school education. And Iowa is one of the first places where a very large proportion of the population is being given a full secondary education at the beginning of the 20th century, about 50 years before that happens in this country. And that, I think, illustrates pretty neatly, even though that wasn't really the principal intention of the authors, That illustrates pretty neatly the way in which the establishment of democracy breeds this desire for more education. There's not a lot of evidence that beyond that basic level, additional increments of education, even higher education, are contributing specifically to workplace productivity. Most workplace productivity comes from the training that you get in the workplace, because most jobs are not geared towards specific educational backgrounds. In Britain, I think 80% of all graduate jobs, that is, jobs aimed at university graduates, are advertised without a specific subject in mind. So they're just looking for a graduate, a high-performing graduate, as high a performing graduate as they can get. And they're not looking for a graduate in cognitive science or creative arts or history or physics. I mean, obviously some jobs, they do require that, but actually in the modern economy, a relatively small proportion of them. What employers want is someone who has got all sorts of behavioral characteristics that we associate with higher education, that they're conscientious, that they work hard, that they don't need supervision, that they can manage other people, and that they have high levels of cognitive performance, which allow them to learn quickly. So, and then they'll teach you what you need to learn in the job.